Welcome.
Hey.
Did I pause? Not moving. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Secrets of Golarion panel. First, I want to introduce my fellow panelists, or let them introduce themselves. Let's start with Luis.
Right. Hi, I'm Luis Loza. I am a developer for Pathfinder. I work a lot on the Lost Omens lines.
And now James.
Hey, I'm James Jacobs. I'm the creative director for Pathfinder. I kind of lurk around all over the place.
And then Mark.
Mark, you're muted.
It's just like a Zoom meeting. Okay.
Yay! The real Paizo experience.
Paizo employees are people too.
Hi, I'm Mark Moreland. I'm muted. I'm the director of brand strategy here at Paizo, and I'm much better at brand strategy than I am using technology.
All right, so for this panel, I'm going to let
who are
James
you?
give a...
Yeah, who are
I'm
you?
Adam Daigle. I'm Adam Daigle. I am the director of game development. Now I'm going to let James give a few guidelines for this panel.
Yay! So we've done this panel, I think, every PaizoCon and often Gen Con and all over the place. It's basically where we all get together and just let you, the audience, decide what we're going to be talking about. The Secrets of Golarion. Ask anything you want about Pathfinder, Golarion. If you ask questions about Starfinder, we'll try to answer them, but that's probably better for a different panel. One thing that we're not going to do is we're not going to reveal what happened to Eridan. There's a whole bunch of just, big events at the start of the Age of Lost Omens with Eridan, the god of humanity, dying, and this giant permanent hurricane opening down in the south, the Eye of Abednego, and the end of prophecy, and these worldwide storms just all over the place. We're not going to reveal those secrets. So that whole element is a part of the world that is sort of a symbol of this is when your player characters get in, and the story becomes the one that you're going to tell rather than the one we're going to tell. So anything else is pretty much open field. Any questions you ask, we'll do our best to answer.
All right, so I'm going to be monitoring the Twitch chat to look for questions. But also, Luis got some questions from our message boards and from Reddit, and we'll pepper those in if there's any sort of lull. So let me fix something on my screen right now. All right, never mind. I'm just going to see what we got. All right. I'm going to go with the first thing I see. Will Gekar asks, scroll. Asks, will we know how and why Nocticula, our true goddess of art, has become a neutral, more good than bad god? And I think that's a James question.
That's something that we've been sort of teasing this of Nocticula, who early in the Pathfinder First Edition rules, she was a demon lord of assassins and darkness and succubi, and we'd been teasing this sort of upcoming transition from demon lord into something new for several years in several adventure paths. We haven't really gone into the nitty gritty about that, but one thing that I like to kind of indicate, I sort of talked about this we're going to have some spoilers for Adventure Passions and adventures and stuff in here. In the Return of the Rune Lord's adventure path, there's all this time travel shenanigans going on, and the idea sort of there is that one of the player characters we assume is a worshiper of Nocticula as a heretical worshiper of time. That is what originally seeded this idea in Nocticula's mind that she could be something more than a demon lord. And you can only kill other demon lords so long before they start really, getting angry at that, so she kind of needed to move on and gain more power anyway. As for more about her, yeah, she's going to be popping up here and there. There's some stuff about her in the Absalom book. I think she's got like a little kind of cameo in the Malongi book, right, Luis? Like a statue of her or something like that. So
yes, I think so.
So yeah, just keep an eye out. We don't have really an actual story to tell about her yet, but I don't know if I answered the question. This is something I tend to do. I start blabbling.
She's part of all the stories, James.
That's
whether
right.
you know it or not.
Huh. All right. Zergatan 99 or Zerg Titan 99, sorry. Will the Sarkorian gods be given Eidolon options? If so, what magic tradition will they be? That might be a good one for Luis.
Right now, I don't know if we have anything in mind for that, partially just because Secrets of Magic isn't out yet and we don't have the full summoner rules in people's hands. But I think a lot of the options that you can come up with for an Eidolon can probably pretty easily map to a lot of the ideas that we've put forth as to what some of these Sarkorian gods can be. A lot of them are just kind of ideas of like animals, like, here's a clan that has a bear as its sacred animal, that's their god, and one that has a stag as a sacred animal, and they kind of get mashed up and stuff like that. So I think you can mix and match a lot of animal ideas and use that to make cool eidolons that then represent these Sarkorian gods. And I think as time goes on, once we get a better feel for how both the rules for eidolons work and kind of start fleshing out kind of the resurgence of people in Sarkoris, I think we can definitely see that coming forth as a thing, but no plans immediately.
All right, one of the next ones I'm going to go to is from our friend Vanessa Hoskins. She's asking an Eridan question, but it's Eridan adjacent, so I think we're okay here. Did Eridan know Ioma was destined to become a god? If so, is that why he made her his herald?
I would say probably not. I think if he could see the future, he would have not done what happened that got him dead. Like if he could see that Ioma was going to inherit his portfolio, he's likely intelligent enough to ask, what am I going to do to lose my portfolio? And he would have not done that. So I would say no. He probably had no idea.
Okay. I feel like Ioma stands as kind of like a paragon of humanity, which feels like a perfect person to adopt as your herald if you are the god of humanity.
Right.
So I think that was more it than anything else.
Yeah, more like a proxy.
There's also an element too. There's also an element too of Ioma. The acts that she did were kind of like her seeing Eridan doing things and realizing that gods aren't infallible, that they do make mistakes. And so a lot of the stuff that was setting herself up to become a god is basically seeing Eridan make mistakes and saying, I could do better. So that's kind of maybe a reverse of what happened. Rather than Eridan grooming her to become his replacement, she kind of self-selected to be in that role.
Eric Mona has chimed in the chat. For those who are not reading along or watching this later, he says he probably assumed that Ioma was in some way destined to replace Erasni because he was all about destiny. That's not the same thing as knowing the future. And we can't argue with Eric Mona, so that's the answer.
Oh, I don't know about that.
That makes sense. All right, so another one from the chat is Pino Graham says, what does the Land of the Linorm Kings think about firearms with them making their way out of Alkenstar? I personally like the idea of Vikings with guns, but other people might have different opinions.
It's really kind of, yeah, you're absolutely right, Adam, it's a case where the GM kind of has to decide how they want to integrate the flavor of guns to whatever new part of Golarion they want to go to. We're going to be pretty limited on how we show technology, guns, clockworks, all of that stuff interact with other parts of the world. I don't think we have many plans for the Linum Kings. I suspect they'd really like them because Vikings enjoy violence and guns are violent.
They also seem like maybe this is the way I can use to kill a Linorm on my own and become a king. You know, this brand new weapon.
No, that's for sure.
Just a
low touch
sense,
AC.
almost the literal silver bullet to solving this Linorm problem.
All right, so Waters Lethe says, do we know enough about old Mage Jetimbe to use him as an NPC in a time travel game, which we would likely not ever do in print, but for home games, I think that's a fun answer or a fun question to answer.
I have thoughts on that. So we
I
had
figured
an
you
entry
might.
for we had an entry for old Mage Jetimbe in Lost Omens Legends that actually is not very good at clearing up anything about who he was. It's more stories than anything else. But I feel like with the upcoming Mwangi Expanse book and the Strength of Thousands AP, by the end of it, people might have a better idea of who old Mage Jetimbe is and can then definitely use that to travel back in time in their home games and do whatever they want with old Mage Jetimbe.
Or don't travel back in time. We never said he died, right? Who knows where he is?
He's
just
went
waiting.
away.
I'm
for a little
amused by
bit.
that question in particular because what I'm working on right now, over literally on this screen right here, is maybe something to do with Strength of Thousands, and you can't do an adventure set in the Megambia without having old Mage Jetimbe be something more than just writing on the wall. He's definitely, you're going to have a lot more about him by this time next year for certain.
Saying that, James, means that the next question is going to be, can you turn your camera to the other screen?
Sure. It's right over here. Oh, wait, no. My laptop doesn't rotate towards the other screen. Sorry.
Okay, let me find another one. There's one about the shackles that I don't know if I'll just ask it anyway. Piratey Steve, of course, asking about the shackles, said, was the Cult of the Eye and their deluge god ever built upon since Isles of the Shackles came out in 2012? And since I'm foggy about what that even means, I'm betting not. Anyone else have any insight?
A lot of the content we do in those big gazetteer books, if we're not specifically trying to support an adventure path plot or something like that, we're kind of laying seeds not only for us to build on in the future, but for GMs. And that is one of the many sort of like hidden, story starters in that book. So we haven't really done much with that plot yet. I doubt we ever will, honestly.
Unless they did something in Pathfinder Society. They do a lot of adventures and travel all over the world.
That's true.
I would check there, but I don't. Nothing comes to mind as touching on that. So you can do with it whatever you want.
All right, trying to find a different question. If one of you see another question, y'all can go ahead
Want
and
me to
address
throw
it.
one of the pre-written
Yeah,
questions we have?
do that. Yeah, do that while I find another.
All right. I have a couple of questions here I collected. This first one is from user The Winged Platypus over on Reddit. Thank you. Who asks, I'd like to know more about the war against Rovagug. Who were the gods involved, and how did they manage to finally defeat and imprison him?
Who are you asking that question to?
It's whoever feels most confident about answering it.
I think James would probably
it's-
be a good candidate.
So actually, in a certain way, Mark, you as well could answer this because you kind of hired me to write a bunch of those Windsong Testament blog fiction
Mhm.
things, and one of those entries, I forget which one, was specifically about the gods kind of teaming up to defeat Rovagug. He's sort of we don't actually have rules for once you get above demigod status and you're into like Sarenrae and Rovagug and Pharasma territory. The only rules are, you know, what we want them to do because they're gods. But you can imply from those stories who is and who isn't more powerful. And Rovagug is, I'm thinking, one of, if not the most powerful, he's definitely in the top three because everybody needed to team up and defeat him. That story, I don't remember the exact title or something. It's on the blog. You can search for the Windsong Testaments, and it talks a lot about it. But a lot of the deities got involved in it. Sarenrae was, of course, the one that was the main stab him and cut a hole in the ground and kick him in. Asmodeus was involved. Callistria was involved.
Zon-Kuthon in
Desna
his
was
previous
involved.
form, Dubral was.
Yeah.
That,
Torag was involved.
That story was called The Rage of Creation. And it
That's right.
was on January 2nd, 2020 is when it showed up. If you just
Right.
go to click on the or search for the Windsong Testaments, and it should pop up there along with the rest of them.
All right, so I've got one that I think is going to be good for James again from TRDG11. How is Ravenel doing? I was quite interested when we went there in Mod 3 and Age of Ashes, and any interaction with old, or shall I say, new smaller Chiliacs yet.
Ravenel is having kind of a tough time. I mean, they've got growing pains. It's a brand new nation. They're sort of wedged between Cheliax, which is the nation that worships the devil, and Nadal, which is, of course, up here, the nation that worships the Cenobites. So they're kind of in a classic rock and the hard place sort of area. Going there during Age of Ashes is specifically something I wanted to do to explore how this new nation is growing. They are at this point negotiating more diplomacy type situations with Nadal, trying to shore up their defenses there, but they're kind of taking that careful because, you know, Nadal is as evil, potentially as evil as Cheliax. They're also building up their alliances with Varisia and with some of the aquatic elf nations offshore down in the ocean. There's a little bit the adventure that I've been that's been in customs, stuck in customs for like 2 or 3 months now. Malevolence actually takes place in Ravenel. It's doesn't really do much about the current setup in there, but one of the elements there is that it's about a haunted house, and one of the plot points that you can start the adventure on, the adventure hook, is that somebody in your group turns out to inherit this old creepy house down in the southwest corner of Ravenel. And since Ravenel's kind of going through like all of these redacted contracts and stuff like that, they're trying to figure out who actually owns all of this land that Cheliax used to like part out to Paracount and all this other thing. So they're really kind of picking up the pieces and sort of figuring out where they're at right now. The adventure I'm running actually for a campaign it's been on hiatus for several months. It's set in Ravenel, and I was exploring a lot of that sort of, you know, new nation trying to deal with just its place in the world, and the fact that it has spent several decades under this regime that has like kind of been going out of their way to cut out their history. So hopefully things will look up for them, because I like Ravenel.
All right, so another one here we've got from Shatreyu. Why is Galt, that I can answer, why has Galt been in a state of bloody revolution for so long? It seems like they would run out of people to execute by now, or at least found new leadership by now, if not simply get exhausted of the revolution by now. Which, yes, the people of Galt are really hating that, and there has been turns in leadership over the years. As for the why, pick up Night of the Grey Death coming out later this year.
Do we want to show them the art piece number 9?
Ooh,
Oh yeah,
oh,
do
we
it.
have that. Yes. Do it, yeah.
Yeah, Night of the Great Death. As that art comes up, Night of the Great Death is an adventure that I've been hopefully wanting us to do for a while, and it's very much the adventure. I don't want to spoil too much, but this adventure resolves a lot of what's going on in Galt and lets your player characters be part of that resolution. That's why it's for 16th level characters. It's a big deal.
Right, yeah. It needs to be something high level to satisfyingly answer that question.
Would you call it a bloody resolution?
Could be. Depends on your player character. Yeah, it's player character. This is going to be very bloody.
All right, so Angry Birds asks a question that is actually probably something that's a secret that I don't know if we can reveal, but I'm going to kick this to Luis. Is Erasni
okay.
backing the Crimson Reclaimers?
Oh boy.
Ooh.
There sure are hints that someone like Erasni is maybe backing the Crimson Reclaimers. I like to think that it's Ragathiel that's doing it. We don't have an answer in print at the moment, but I think we might have an idea as to who's doing it, and then are going to tell you anyone but that and throw you off the scent for the next 5 years until we decide we want to reveal it.
That makes sense.
So it's not Ragathiel, is what you're saying.
It's not Ragathiel or Erasni is the thing. That's what you should be picking up on this.
Huh.
Yeah, I think the
Or
I think
should
the
it be?
operative word here. I think the operative word here is unrevealed.
Or
Ask
do
again
the
later.
kung fu things like, who do you think it should be?
Then, as a follow-up to the Galt question, someone asked, "Will the Galt Revolution end?" And it's like, maybe. Like, it depends on what the characters do in Night of the Grey Death, but also sometimes people like to fight. So I think the biggest threat will be eliminated if the characters are successful, but Galt's gonna Galt sometimes.
It's definitely, the adventure is definitely set up so that if your player characters go through and win, they can basically redeem, save Galt, start something new.
But until we publish a book that replaces Galt, that says what is in Galt next, until those events canonically happen, it's
this adventure comes pretty close to canonizing those.
Well, there you go.
All right.
I should probably read ahead.
So Joe the Shark NYC asks, would a god like Shelyn even bother being a witch's patron, or is that just too mundane?
I think absolutely she'd bother. I mean, to a certain extent, the gods are not people. They get to do things better than people do. So if Shelyn is a goddess who can, support entire faiths on countless worlds and realities and all, she can handle a few witch patrons as well. Absolutely.
And our initial Meet the Iconics backstory for Fea hinted that maybe she was being patronized by Desna, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not out of the realm of possibility that a god or one of a god's agents could act as a patron. But part of the thing that makes a witch's patron is that you never really know fully exactly who it is. There's always some mystery involved, because they don't actively interact with their patron. They use the intermediary of their familiar, and there's only so much a little animal can tell you.
There's a character trope that I see people really enjoy a lot, where it's like, I want to have a character that thinks they worship something, but in fact gains their power from something else entirely, and that just doesn't work with clerics. It works really well with witches. It works pretty well with the oracles.
Absolutely. So, Zergatan99, another god question. Does the god Tsukio have any temples in the Inner Sea region? If so, where? This might be a good one for Louise, but I think all three of you could answer that pretty well.
I think the safest thing to assume is if they were a god that was featured in Gods and Magic, along with the core 20 deities, there was like the other 20 deities with like Milani and Tsukio and the others. Assume that they, at the very least, have some kind of worship in Absalom, and then from there, that faith can kind of build out in whatever direction it needs to go. So if you're looking for, reasoning for your player character to say, hey, how did they learn about this deity? Maybe that faith started in Absalom because it was brought in from the rest of the world and then brought out to wherever it needs to. And I think there are probably pockets all over the place. Someone like Tsukio maybe has something up close to the lands of the Linorm Kings or near Varissia, because that travel from the crown of the world that connects the north of Avestan to Tian Sha and stuff like that.
That makes sense. All right, Darren C. asks... Oh, go ahead. Keep going.
I was just going to say, there's also no other real god of the moon. So, I mean, this is a celestial body that the people in Avestan would see just as much as they see the sun. So, there's no reason to think that they wouldn't know of Tsukio, even if he's not a super, present god.
Right. Darren C. asks, what was the fate of the Dwarven Kings of the Five King Mountains, as it is not definitive if they died or suffered a darker fate? Anyone have anything for that?
I don't.
That
If
sounds
it's
like
not
a good
definitive,
state.
then it's not definitive. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the closest thing we ever got was mentioning Targic in Legends, and it mentions that he died, but also had regrets at the end of his life. But that's about it. So, who knows? Maybe they're still alive, because being some of the first dwarves that rule the first Sky Citadels might come with extra benefits that we don't know about yet.
There may have been some hints and such. The Fourth Age of Ashes adventure. But yeah, it's not something we've really done a lot of work with yet.
All right. Luis, pop another one of those questions while I find something else.
Okay.
And also, chat. I want to remind chat one thing. We're here to talk about lore and stuff, not product, when a product's going to come out or any of that stuff, or what products are upcoming. There are other panels for that. So keep it to lore questions.
We won't have rules answers either.
Right.
So, user here by the name Irregular Null is asking, is the Dominion of the Black up to anything we might see soon? And I feel that's definitely a James question.
Yes, the Dominion of the Black is for sure up to things. Don't want to again get into too many spoilers, but I wish it wasn't stuck in customs, because we could talk more about it. But Malevolence is involving certain Dominion of the Black adjacent shenanigans. The big story that we did with them during the playtest with Doomsday Dawn kind of closed out a long ongoing story we were telling about them during first edition, but it's not the only story left to tell. I've got in my rattling around in my head a sequel to Iron Gods that plays up what was going on in Valley of the Brain Collectors. And so there's a lot more Dominion of the Black stuff that I could see happening.
All right, so I'm going to pick this one, and I'm probably not going to have a satisfying answer, but I'm going to ask the question anyway, because one of you might have more. Severin Laureate asks, can you tell us anything about who built the Stone Circle Pond in Otari? And I developed troubles in Otari, and none of that information was in that. But since it isn't to Abomination Vaults, which James did some work on, he might know.
Yeah, it's basically just an old druid circle. So it doesn't really, there's not like any hidden secrets or lore built into the region. When I built Atari, I did a lot of the same thing I did when I was building Sandpoint. Is I looked back at my hometown for inspiration and looked at regional threats and stuff like that and tried to get information in there. And the stone circle is really there to give the druids in sort of this werewolf element. An anchor to go around, but there's nothing really in my head that is unpublished lore about who built it. So that's I guess at this point a pretty safe place for, if you want to expand on it in your game, to do so without worrying that we're going to overwrite what you do sometime in the future.
One chapter of the novella that Leanne
right.
Merciel wrote that's sort of tied in with our Otari products, called The Shroud of Four Silences, which is it was originally emailed out to our members of our mailing list, chapter by chapter, but is now available. You can buy it on the Kindle store or Paizo.com. One chapter there takes place at the pond. So if you're looking for a little bit more about the location, but it doesn't reveal anything about its past. So as James said, it's free for you to do what you want.
All right, so I'm going to take this one just to address it, even though I don't typically address alignment in polite company. But Koro 7600.
It's okay. I'm here. It's not polite company.
Koro 7600 asks, is the alignment of Golarion still shifting towards evil, or has the closing of the world wound stopped that? And I don't necessarily think that we've ever stated that the alignment of Golarion is shifting towards evil, but I think our creative director would probably have some words on all of this.
Yeah, it's not shifting anywhere. It's Golarion is intended. First and foremost, we invented Golarion as a place for your stories to happen, your characters to become heroes, and if there's not awful villainous stuff going on all the time in Golarion, then you don't have anything to do there. So we don't have any adventures to publish there. So it's not that Golarion is shifting toward evil or chaos even, as much as it is it's just a place where there's a lot of things for heroes to go be heroic for. So it's, if anything, the point at which we stop having evil things happening in Golarion comes along. That's the point where we, pull the switch and turn it off and say, all right, all of your player characters win. Golarion is now a perfectly safe place to live. We're doing something else. So I don't see that happening.
And it's called Starfinder. Golarion then goes away, and then you play Starfinder.
That's what caused the gap. It got too safe.
All right, so Brian273 asks, excuse me, what's the relationship between Ragadan and Fafnir?
Well, I think from what I know about Fafnir, he claims that he had to leave the first world, and some stories think that it might be because he got in trouble with the eldest. I don't know if there's, at least off the top of my head, any direct connection with Ragadan, but it definitely seems like if the father of all Linormsy, the greatest Linorm of all time on Golarion, got into some trouble in the first world, it probably at least would have gotten some of the attention of Ragadan, especially him being a kind of a water dragon serpent thing. So if there's any kind of direct connection, I don't think there's one that I can recall, but it definitely wouldn't be outside of the realm of possibility that that those two kind of maybe cross paths or got some whiff of each other over the years.
All right, this one's going to be totally.
He had to leave the first world. Oh, we keep doing that. It could also be that the reason that he had to leave the first world is that the eldest he pissed off was Ragadan.
Yeah.
So if you want there to be a connection, there's a plot hook right there that you can run with until we say something about it.
All right, so this is going to be probably our answers are going to be purely speculative unless anyone on the panel actually thought about this. But I found it an intriguing question asked by that person you may know. Asked, "What would things be like on the surface of Grotus?"
That's a great question. That's my favorite so far.
Very
sad.
Imagine like being on the surface of the moon, but always feeling that you're being watched. And then every once in a while, one of the craters you're standing in like closes as it blinks on you.
That's creepy.
I mean, now that I say that, there's also this element of like, when I was working on Planar Adventures, I started getting my head stuck in this place where it's like when we talk about, other planes, they don't have magnetic norths. They don't necessarily even have stars in the sky. So I was really trying to set up for all of these different planes. What happens, when you navigate? How do you navigate? What do you see when you look up in the sky? Is there even a day-night cycle? And I think the weird thing, if you were on the surface of Grotus, you would be able to just look right down onto the boneyard and just see the entire thing spread out below you, and that would probably, kind of like looking up into the sky and seeing just these lines of these rather than the stars, just these kind of ribbons going through all of the sky above of all of these different lines of dead souls waiting to be judged would be a fun way to remind yourself of the place in the multiverse.
Mark, do you want to say anything before I interrupt you again? All right. Where was it? Okay, TRDG 11 asked, anything new or old going down in the strike trademarked term Darklands?
I keep pushing for us to do. Whenever we're talking about a new adventure paths, the idea of a Darklands themed adventure path keeps coming up. So there's definitely stuff going on down there. Abomination Vaults touches on it very, very briefly.
There's a little bit in Extinction Curse too.
That's right.
The Darklands. I think you hit up a vault proper in Extinction Curse. So
yeah,
there's some
ultimately the Darklands are like 3 layers that are all as robust and populated by stuff as the surface. So if there's stuff going on the surface, then there's just as much stuff happening down there. So that I think is a safe assumption. Part of the thing that makes the Darklands fun is that it's easy to forget about. It's easy to forget that it's down there. So like Luis and James said, we touch upon it here and there in adventures, just as a reminder that there's this other ecosystem down there. But aside from some setting books, and the Second Darkness AP way back in the before times, we've never really done anything that was fully set in the Darklands. So
all right, so Fritterfey asks a question and jumps to a part of the world that we haven't talked about yet in any of this. It says, over in Rahadum, the town of Botosani has been struggling against the Pure Legion for years. With so much change with Vidrian and Ravenel, is Botosani in line for a change? I don't know if any of us are experts in Rahadum, but I know Luis has worked a lot in the world, so...
Rahadum definitely feels like a place where if you wanted to, in your home campaigns, kind of strike up that whole, maybe religion tries to worm its way back in, or something like that. Definitely a great place for a story like that. Revolution definitely seems like a prime idea for that kind of thing. It's not anything I think we're kind of hinting at the moment, but doesn't, never say never, and there's always chances that something like that we might not see a full-on revolution on screen, in an adventure. We might start seeing the first bits of track getting laid for us in the future for stuff like that.
All right. Next one, we've got Koro 7600 again, asking, have the Knights of Last Wall found a permanent home in Absalom, or are they looking to take up residence somewhere else?
Ooh, I am confident in answering this one. The Knights of Last Wall are not at all looking to settle down until they've taken back their home of former Last Wall, of the current Gravelands. If they're going to settle down, it's going to be their home that used to belong to them. So if anything, right now they are spreading out more and more to get more help to come back to the Gravelands, clear it all out of any undead, put a stop to some guy called the Whispering Tyrant, and bring about good into the world. Absalom is kind of just a kind of checkpoint and a nice little place where they can recruit more people to the cause, and use that kind of as a staging area to send out resources wherever they need. But for the moment, they're not looking for a home. They're looking to make everything safe before they can settle down again.
Right, Luis hit another one of those questions. I realize that I've got a lot to catch up on here in the chat.
Oh boy, no problem. I have one here from user Driva on Reddit, who would love to know more about what's going on in Kyonin and what's going on with its leader, Talandia. They mentioned that Tree Razor seemed to be an important figure early on in second edition, but Kyonin itself hasn't really gotten much attention. And I feel like, James, again, you might have a lot of ideas about what's going on with Kyonin and Tree Razor, but I will point out that we mentioned Talandia in Lost Omens Legends, so at the very least you can catch up a little bit with her in that book.
Yeah, we definitely decided when we were doing second edition we needed a boss monster, I guess is what I'll call it, for the bestiary. And in first edition, that was the Tarasque, which is this classic giant Godzilla monster that has been around in the game, previous editions of D&D and all that from the start. With second edition, we really wanted to have our own kind of tough guy in our main book. So we sent the Tarasque on to, he's asleep. He's not really doing anything. And we brought in Tree Razor as that character. And you can kind of, maybe look at that as sort of Chekhov's nascent demon lord. He's going to show up at some point and feature, I think, in a pretty strong role there. I mean, there's this implication of like the adventure path where Kyonin and Tanglebriar finally go to war is been a sort of a obvious adventure path plot from day one, whether it's an adventure path or a mega adventure or something, or who knows what. It's something that I've kind of been ready to work on pretty much whenever. It's a plot line that doesn't really have to happen at any specific spot or timeline or anything like that. But in particular, one thing that I'm really eager to do is to go back and explore Kyonin and explore it in a way that allows us to look at elves as like aliens. They're as chaotic good creatures. So much of what we did in the very early years leaned, I think, too hard on like the D&D or Tolkien sort of traditions of what elves are. And Golarion elves are a lot more than that. They're not they're not xenophobic. They aren't super, true. They kind of change appearance if they live in place too long. And there's stuff that we can explore in Kyonin subtext point where I'm kind of just waiting for to do it. We got a schedule, a lot going on. So hopefully someday I just want to see more Kyonin stuff just on the message boards and let the publisher know, more importantly.
Well, he's in the chat, so all right.
Oh, no.
So Mask Penguin. Mass Penguin asks, with Belkzen wanting to open up to the rest of the world, are they going to adopt the Last Wall refugees? Luis.
I think I have some insight there too. I think it's a bit of, I don't know if they take in the refugees because the whole of the Belkzen is not necessarily that much safer than the Gravelands, but I can definitely see the inverse happening where they come in to make things safe for whoever's left there. There's a lot more acceptance suddenly when you have all these undead to serve as your main enemy. You know, old grudges kind of fall to the wayside when it's like, well, we got to kill thousands or millions of undead. Let's ask our orc friends. Let's ask the hobgoblins and Oprak for help. So I think that's more likely to happen than have refugees come in. I think, if anything, refugees would probably try to head south as far away from the Gravelands as possible. So the likes of Absalom and Taldor and Andoran are the more likely places to take in refugees. But the orcs, I could definitely see them coming in to help clear up the place, just because at the very least it's another good fight to partake in.
All right, so Ysberd Naws asks, will we learn anything more about the Storm Kindlers and the Sodden Lands in the Mwangi books? Not to pile too many questions on you, Luis.
Oh, no problem. So the Sodden Lands definitely get a bit of focus in the Mwangi Expanse book. This book is enormous, and I feel like even with 312 pages, it doesn't scratch the surface. It's barely scratching the surface. I know that the Storm Kindlers get a brief mention, but we don't really go into depth about what they're doing at the moment. But there's I think 4 to 6 pages on the Sodden Lands themselves that I think you can use to kind of expand on that and build on any campaign ideas or adventures that you'd like to do.
All right, so Prince Setahariel, I love mispronouncing screen or handles. When will we learn more lore about the first fifth horseman, the Bound Prince? This might be a James one.
That's another topic up in one of the wind songs. That one, the Three Phasma touches a little bit on that character. It's an interesting character. We got mentioned before even there was a Pathfinder, I believe, back in the first Great Beyond book when we were still doing stuff and leaning really on things like the Tomers and stuff like that. And you deal back far enough in time and you get to like first edition D&D had this character, the Oina Daemon, who was the boss of all the daemons, and he had a name. He was called Anthraxis, and he had all these other people vying for a certain, like Bubonus and Cholerus, and all of these demons that were named after diseases. And that was kind of, I guess, fine for the time, but right now it's not really, I mean, particularly today, it's not a tradition I'm interested in carrying on at all. So we've been increasingly, whenever this topic comes up and we're talking about this first primal horseman, have been moving away from this incarnation of an Oina daemon and developing the character as something that is a part of and there's stuff that I think the last that we've talked about this character a little bit. I think the adventure of Return of the Grim Lords shows up a little bit in there, even sort of implied, not really even on screen. It's certainly not in the category of Aerith's death or anything that will never get out. I'm certainly interested in having more stuff about the up or Gal or whatever it ends up being on screen, but not yet. I don't know if he's popping any of the women's books recently. I pretty key at this point.
All right. Round One Gaming asks, are the Forsaken in hiding?
looking from the is that the
That's
demigod associated with. I'm trying to not too much here in an event. They're
I
associated
know, right?
with the the obs, the Caligni, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Uh,
And I knew you did some work on that
yeah,
adventure, so
yeah, they're in hiding. The basic idea of the first is that they're sort of the other or the inverse of the role play list. That was the original kind of starting spot for them that Wes were talking about even many years ago. And we've just kind of been dropped about them in there. We got Ob showed up in Best 33, right?
that or four.
And so say calling it them as in hiding is a good way to. I mean, they're certainly hiding from the plot working on. But
yeah, they still have power.
I'm
yeah.
Yes.
All right, Luis, do you have another one while I scroll through some of these?
I wanted to pull up one of the other art pieces that we have, I think, to show that off real quick. So if we want to pull up
let's do it.
number 4, slide number 4 here. We were talking earlier about revolutions and stuff, and here's an upcoming piece from the Mwangi Expanse book. This is the ship is set in Vidrian. This is right after the revolution at Vidrian. This is just as they've gotten liberty and freedom and have become liberated as a new nation. So this is kind of a big opener that introduces the people and the regions of the Mwangi Expanse. So it's kind of an interesting scene of history that we've talked about, but because of the nature of how things kind of played out in explaining the changeover from Sargarva to Vidrian, we didn't really showcase it yet, but now this piece here kind of shows that momentous occasion as freedom it has been won in Vidrian.
And we might have a piece of web fiction coming soon that will show a little scene of what's happening in Vidrian when or shortly after that transition has taken place. Or maybe not.
While not related to Golarion, as I was scrolling through, I saw someone ask, do we have to wear these shirts at work, or is it just for the stream? And it's no, these are just convention wear.
Wait, you mean I don't have to...
I mean, you can. All right. This is actually not lore-based, but it's still interesting. Theodos asks, what's your favorite place in Golarion? So let's start with Mark, because we're about to have to wrap this up.
Yeah, my favorite place in Golarion, I think that one of the places that I think is most interesting to tell stories is Nidal. We did quite a bit with Nidal right at the end of first edition, so I don't know when we'll be going there again. But yeah, I like Nidal.
James, I think we know the answer to this.
Standpoint. Easy answer.
Luis.
I don't think I can officially say Arcadia as an answer, so I'm going to stick to something within the Inner Sea. I am still very fond of Varisia. I mean, it's the first bit that we explored with Pathfinder, and this first area I kind of learned about because I started off basically right out of the gate with Pathfinder at its release, so it's near and dear to my heart. And I guess only second to Katapesh because I ran Legacy of Fire as my very first AP, and I kind of liked that nation as well.
I'm going to do the flip-flop of what Luis's answer was and definitively say that Arcadia is my favorite, with Varisia as a second. All right. We've got 5 minutes left, so let's start wrapping this up. Let's talk about where people can find you on social medias. And again, we'll go in that same order. We'll start with Mark.
On social media, I am Yoda, the numeral 8, my head. Yoda 8, my head, like it says right down there. And that's the best place to find me on socials. See you around.
All right, James.
I'm sort of a hermit. You can find me at the forums. I answer questions there over on my at Ask Jit, and I'll certainly hear all weekend. We've a lot of us have asking threads over on the Discord. If you have any questions or that we didn't get to, go ahead and ask, drop it in there, and I can do to answer.
Luis.
Yeah, you can find me at Donato Classic, which is right down here in the nice little bottom section. You can also visit my site, luisloza.com, which has links to my socials, which are a lot easier than trying to remember how to spell my Twitter handle. And yeah, as James mentioned, I'll be in the Discord all weekend. Come by the AMA channel and ask your questions. I'll be happy to, at the very least, tag someone else that might know the answer if I don't know what it is, and maybe help you get some kind of answer if you come by.
And yeah, mine is in the little bar at the bottom. It's at Daigle on Twitter. And like the others, I will be in the Discord this weekend. I want to thank everybody for showing up and for all your interesting questions. And I know I didn't get to a lot of you guys, but maybe next time. But for now, stick around. Stick around for at 6 o'clock, Band on the Run, written by Luis Loza, an awesome Starfinder one shot, is going to be run by the awesome crew at Dragons and Things. So stay tuned, wait for that small break, and then enjoy a whole lot of fun from a live play. All right. Well, bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.